Okay, still on the descent to Krimsk, coming down through about 7,500 meters above ground level, and one thing that I noticed was listed as a work in progress in the manual, and that's the canopy fogging, and just some little stuff that would be included in the ECS system. You know, canopy icing and canopy fogging specifically would be awesome. I mean, it would be a pain, don't get me wrong, but it would give us a reason to tweak the settings on the ECS system, and to, I believe it also ties into this dump valve right here. That's going to have something to do with canopy fogging if I'm interpreting everything that I'm reading and seeing correctly. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that because the pilot workload was involved in running the oxygen system, running the ECS, and just running the general systems around the aircraft was extremely high. And without little details like that, without canopy fogging, icing, and just stuff like that, you know, it can get a little bit boring. You know, you set your stuff up and you just don't touch them for the rest of the flight. Whereas in reality, in a real MiG-15, you would be constantly tweaking stuff, not only to say, not to mention just to control the temperature, because up at this altitude, I would probably be very, very cold right now, and that just doesn't really come through when you're doing this sitting in your nice. Well, granted, it's a little bit cold here right now because I live in a very drafty house, but it doesn't really give you the same feeling sitting right here in front of your monitor that you would get in the cockpit of a MiG-15, and give you a reason to play with some of these other controls. So still coming down and descending through 5,000. Okay, let me push my throttle back up to keep my generator running. That's one thing to keep an eye on, is that you can easily pull it back pull it back all the way to the idle setting, and then all of a sudden you don't have enough RPMs on the engine to fully power the generator. Although the battery, since the battery switch is on, the battery does kick in cases like that, so it's no big deal if that does happen. So, okay, as we come through this cloud, let me go ahead and pull up my checklist, and we'll have a look at landing. And I've been playing with other stuff. I said I was going to read ahead on this a little bit, but of course I didn't. And it's going to be landing on runway 22 again, opposite direction for what I'm flying right now. So deploy your air brakes, line up on the runway, reduce speed to 400 to 450. Make sure that you keep the air brake deployed, or you will run out of runway if you try to land without it. Okay. And again, this is just Chuck Owl's procedure and process, and I'll come up with my own stuff, or just this is probably about what I would have come up with anyway. Deploy flaps to 20 degrees and deploy landing gear once you reach 320 to 350. Press the flap switch incrementally until you deploy them to 55 degrees. So, boy, was I really misinterpreting the flaps here? Is it more of like a... I thought it was just a force setting lever. It's in the neutral setting right now. Then I would go down to 20 degrees and down again to 55 degrees. But it might just be almost like a control valve. It might be the case that I just put it down. That opens up the valve, and it just keeps opening, or it keeps the valve open and lowers the flaps until I go back to the neutral setting. Well, we're about to find out. Okay, got my light for the generator on again, so let me trim a little bit nose up, bring it around into a left-hand turn. Okay, engine power is 7 to 9,000. Just like it says there, avoid reducing power below 6,000 RPM and keep your speed higher than 200. Any slower may induce a stall. So yeah, no sweat there. I'm about 450 right now. Touchdown 200 to 220. Throttle idle after touchdown. Gently hold the brake lever to slow down. Once clear, retract flaps and air brakes. Shut down the aircraft. Okay, that is straightforward. I just got to remember the 200 to... Yeah, I say remember. I've already forgot it. 20 seconds later. Touchdown 200 to 220. Approach speed would have been 250 to 270. Okay, and there we have a Russian diagram right there. Okay, that's showing runway rollout distance. Okay, 250 to 270. Touchdown about 210. Got it. Okay, so well, speaking of that, coming up on it pretty swiftly. Let me go with speed brakes out to cut into my airspeed, and I'm just going to pull the throttle back to about 5,500 or so. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, coming down through 450 indicated. And Okay, let me bring it a little bit right just to keep lined up on the runway. Okay, right about here, I should be good to go flaps. I'm going to eventually go full down. Let me see what this setting does. As I retract the speed brake and I need to go, wow, that's a lot of pitch up. I need to go elevator trim down. Okay, let me go flaps full down, watch my indicator. Okay, the indicator is coming up, so I'm just going to go full down on the lever, like right there, and just leave it there. Okay, there's my warning buzzer again. That might be airspeed without flaps, or without gear, or maybe it's just detecting that I have the flaps down and that I don't have the gear down. Maybe something like that. I've also got this light on, which I've never seen before. I'll tell you what, let me do something a little bit different here. Let me pause and go to the manual. I want to understand these lights, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. That was quick and easy. Yeah, this is a flaps warning light, and this is on when the flaps are fully down at 55 degrees, so that's a normal indication. This light is a landing gear warning light, so I don't know the exact criteria for this thing to come on, but I suspect that it's tied into airspeed, or maybe it's flaps setting coupled with airspeed that makes this light come on. In either case, I am going to go around on this approach because I'm a little bit behind on getting the gear down. So let me hit resume, push it up, and I'm just going to do just a go around right here. Let me go. Okay, there's the master warning again. Okay, let me go ahead and go gear down. So I've got my, I'll check my safety lever, see if I can do that. Okay, yeah, and it's telling me that I need to retract the lever and then go down. That's weird. Okay, so I'm approaching the ground a little bit. Let me go throttle up slightly because I'm about 250, which is fine. I've still got the aircraft well under control, but I did get a little bit lower than I wanted to get. And I'm just going to come back around. Okay, a little bit more throttle. And this is kind of a bad situation, come to think of it, to get into, because I had the throttle back and the engine spools up so slowly that if I really needed to have a burst of power right then, or if I was slower than that, it might have been kind of a bad situation to be in, because I wouldn't have been able to run the engine back up quickly enough to give me some more power. So okay, I'm glad that I got that figured out, and that'll be very important if I do need to abort the landing, or if I need to go around during a landing. Just keeping in mind that there is a big delay in power setting. Okay, so coming around, boy, I've got to push it up again. Boy, this thing has got a lot of drag on it, and it is showing. Okay, there's 250, so let me get it back up to around 270 or so on this approach. Okay, so coming on around, and let me go to the neutral setting right here and see what happens. See if it. And I think the cylinder for the flaps is going to lock it into place, so that even though I bring it back to the neutral setting, the flaps are not going to come back up. And I've still got that indicator telling me that they are down at 55, was it, degrees? And I can also tell by the visual indication. I can also tell, okay, visually I've got my gear down and locked, and I've got my 3 green lights. Okay, so now let me go ahead and make this landing. So 250, just going to turn to final, and just manage the throttle as I bring it in. I might consider, I could do it kind of like an A-10 landing, kick out the speed brakes and just have the higher throttle setting in case I do need to go around. I'm not going to do it this time, but that might actually be the way to do it in retrospect. But I think I've got enough. Okay, now I've got the light on again. I believe that's going to be tied into, I don't know what that's tied into. I think it's tied into throttle setting, in fact. Okay, so I'm going to land a little bit long. I'm floating a little bit. I've got a lot more lift being generated than I had accounted for. So I might go around again on this one. Although, yeah, I think I'll make this one work. So I'm going to pull my throttle in and just fly the aircraft and hold it off just a touch. Touchdown about 220. Okay, there we go. There's touchdown. Okay, nose gear's down, and now I just need to just put in some braking. And there should be no problem whatsoever when it comes to a runway length. This thing is going to come to a stop very, very quickly. And I will deploy my speed brakes just to give me a little bit more drag on the aircraft, although it's a little bit too slow right now for that to really matter. Okay, so down. Now let me go ahead and retract my flaps and taxi to parking, which is right up here and off the runway to the left. So, yeah, that was a little bit sloppy on the landing, but I mean, all in all, that wasn't bad for a first attempt. And yeah, it was very, very, I guess, to coin a term, floaty on the approach. So a lot of lift is generated by this aircraft, by the flaps, and yeah, I just need to plan ahead a little bit, get established on the recommended airspeeds a little bit earlier on the approach. Okay, so let me go ahead and differential braking to the left. Now, I wonder how much air pressure I have left. I've not really used the pneumatic system for anything other than some braking during the taxi, but that's another consideration, is that I have a finite amount or pressure of pneumatic, or on the pneumatic system of compressed air. And boy, I botched that taxi all up. Let me throttle up again, get it moving, and go differential braking to the right. And I'm just going to pull it on over here into my parking spot, which was on the second line. Okay, let me straighten it back out, as the crew chiefs are laughing at me right now and knocked it too fast. Okay, a little bit of touch on the brakes. Differential braking to the left. Just touching the brakes, trying not to put too much braking action in lest I stop the aircraft completely, and overshot it a little bit, but that's okay because here's my, sure, I'll consider this my parking location and bring it on around. Okay, throttle back in. Now let me straighten it back out. Okay, good enough. I'll take it. And that's something that's just going to take a little bit of practice and a little bit of getting used to, is handling the aircraft on the ground. Now let me check my pneumatic gauge. I wish I had taken note of what it was at before I started this, but I wonder. Let me just play with this for a while. I'm just going to, and you can see it as what I'm doing is I'm just going in and out on the braking lever over and over and over, and I can see the gauge coming down as I do it, very, very slowly. So yeah, there is a definite bleed off in air pressure as we do that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and shut down the aircraft, and I'm going to not use the procedure. I think I understand enough about the aircraft at this point, and that's a very, very non-aviation thing to say, is not to use the checklist, but at this point I'm really coming up with my own procedure when it comes to how to start up, shut down, and how to operate the aircraft. So first things first, I should have done this earlier actually, once I got the gear down. Let me go ahead and go gear selector to the neutral position and engage my lock. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to do. Now I want to clean up the aircraft by getting the trim center back out. I want to come around. I want to turn off my, okay, let me pop off my last flare, or last two flares. There goes the red one bouncing down the ramp. Yeah, nothing, this is not anything that I would ever do for real. It's firing flare at the ground crew. Okay, so that's neat. Let me go off on the switch and look around for anything else to turn off. I didn't do anything with the radios. I'm going to wait. Actually, I will go ahead and do this. I'll go ahead and turn off the ECS. That's going to depressurize the cockpit, and I've got zero differential. And at this point, I could go ahead and crack the canopy. I'll leave it closed just so that I'm not having to shout over the engine sounds. And let me go ahead and start getting systems off. So I'm going to go ARC off. I'm going to go radar altimeter off. I think I got it. Yeah, that's off. I'm going to go, and I'll memorize these at one point, or someone will invariably release an English language mod for the cockpit, which I will use once that comes out. So at this point, I've got my generator and my battery on, and I want to, let me see. What I want to, I think that in reality, I would want to depressurize the utility hydraulic system for the ailerons and have this kind of start in the off position. That's just a guess on my part. And I also want to go to the neutral position on my flaps just to take away any residual hydraulic pressure on the system. Okay, throttle, let me go ahead and pull it back to idle. And at this point, I want to shut down the engine by going fuel cutoff valve closed. Okay, so my engine's going to spool back down. And my generator I can turn off at this point. I can turn off my engine ignition, fuel boost pumps, and all the other stuff, whatever these switches were. Oh, that's never a good answer. Let me see if I can learn these again. This one was boost pump, ignition switch, instruments and lights, transfer pump. Okay, got it. Okay, at this point, yeah, let me go ahead and get the canopy open and breathe some fresh air. And I always notice it, especially when I've been doing this a while, it's just this little psychological thing that always happens when I open up a canopy. I could swear that the air that I'm breathing in the real world is fresher right now than it was before. Okay, I've got that. Let me go battery off. And I am ready to egress the aircraft at this point. So there you go. That is startup, shutdown, takeoff, landing. A little bit of more tinkering with the systems. And as we go, we're figuring more and more stuff out about the way that this aircraft works. One thing that I didn't do, however, was shut off my oxygen supply valve so that I'm not wasting the oxygen. So, okay, got that. Now, okay, so I'm going to move on next time, and we're going to start looking at the communication and navigation system. So next flight is probably going to be like a little cross-country flight, starting here at Krimsk and going somewhere that is worth flying to. I'll figure that out as I go, so... thanks again for watching, everybody. I hope you are enjoying this series, and thanks again. I'll see you next time.